Welcome to FriendsworldTV. Today it's our pleasure to have Nathan Hagarty, who is running for Liverpool Mayor. Nice to meet you, Nathan. Thanks so much for coming along today. Tell us a bit about yourself, your history and what you've done.
So pretty much lived in the Liverpool area my whole life. We lived in a little red brick flat in Cartwright for a few years and then moved a few suburbs over, and I now live in Green Valley with my wife and two kids, a daughter 14 and a son 12. Essentially, love the area, never left it, very passionate about the area, and have worked a variety of roles. So I had a very interesting path to politics, I guess you could say. Most people start out in student politics. I didn't. I basically joined the Labor Party when I was about 33. Got a bit involved there, and before that I worked in financial services and IT as a business analyst, project manager, and then in strategic IT for a number of years, both in the private sector and the public sector. One thing led to another, and I found myself as a councillor in 2016 on Liverpool Council.
Fantastic. And I believe your father was in the New South Wales Police Force?
Yeah, so Dad was a police officer, Mum worked at Franklin's, and we lived in public housing for a while. I went to public schools, and very passionate about the fact that public institutions can help people achieve their full potential. I think I'm a perfect example of that. Just a funny sort of story. When I got involved in politics, my dad, said, what are you doing getting involved in politics? Why would anyone want to be a politician? And I sort of remarked to him that when he became a police officer, he had friends and family say to him, why would you want to be a police officer? So it's funny how, sort of one generation after the other, the same thing happens. And I think it's the same thing. I think we both wanted to give back to our community.
Yeah, that's great.
Help in one way.
Yeah, definitely. You're following your father's footsteps there with helping the community and serving the community. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's nice. I'll be very proud. So you've been 5 years at the council now, and you're running for mayor. Tell us about some of the success you had as the councillor and some of the projects that you've run.
Yeah, so I guess when I got onto council, I wanted to bring some of my skills and experience from IT. If you worked in and around IT, you know that a lot of it involves thinking outside the square and coming up with novel solutions, and I think I've brought that to council through a few different ways. A couple of things I'm proud of is we've fought a couple of successful battles against what myself and the community deemed as inappropriate development. A couple of developments where essentially a company wanted to build a motor oil facility within 100 or 200 metres from the suburb. No problem with motor oil and jobs, good for the economy. However, the location of it was quite inappropriate. Community got in contact with me, and we thought a really good campaign there, and they eventually decided to go somewhere else, and I was quite proud of that. Another thing I'm proud of is we've basically taken the fight to the state government over a number of issues. One of those was tolls, the M8 toll. So when the government opened the M8, they also put a toll on the M5 tunnel, which up until that point had been around for quite a while and didn't have a toll. We were quite successful in prosecuting that case and arguing for some reprieve for people from Liverpool. So too, but I could probably go on for a few hours, but very, very proud of what I've achieved over the last 5 years.
Yeah, major achievements. It's really good. What about the community-driven solutions that I know you've been involved with too? Yeah,
so I think some of the best ideas come from the community. I think all too often bureaucrats and politicians think they have the answers to everything, and if you work with the community, you work with community organisations, that's certainly when council's at its best, and they facilitate that. So one particular example is in some of our suburbs there's very narrow streets, and the current road rules are that you can't park on the verge. If you park on the verge, you get fined. So what that means is cars park in the street, and you basically can't get past. If there's an emergency services vehicle, so there's a fire and an ambulance that needs to go through, they can't get through. Sometimes the garbage trucks can't get through. So a couple of ideas, from the community came through, and we worked on those, and I threw in my own sort of 2 cents. And what Liverpool Council is currently doing at the moment is there's an allocation in the budget every year where we're basically putting in indented parking bays.
Yeah.
So basically retrofitting some of these suburbs to make sure that there is now additional parking. So that's one of the ideas where the community's driven that, and over the next few years, I think we'll start to see that problem start to be solved. Now, the other end of that problem is I think we also need to change the road rules. The road rules are written by people that live in the inner city and understand how things work, but out in the suburbs, I think there is a practical solution for, if you're sort of not blocking the path or letting people through, maybe there is a way to allow people to sort of park on the verge. But it's these sort of day-to-day things that frustrate people, and they're the kind of things that I think in the past, people have gone, councillors and mayors have gone sort of, oh, that's too hard, you'll never fix that problem. And I've said, no, there is a way to fix these problems, and with the help of the community, I think we've done that.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. Talk to us about your local jobs for local people. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, look, I'm a big fan of I guess it's a movement called community wealth building. It was quite popular in Cleveland, and it's done quite well in Preston in the UK. And essentially, it's based around the idea that I think for too long, governments and other organisations have outsourced things to large multi-corporate corporations.
Yeah.
And what that means is, you're a ratepayer, I'm a ratepayer. If we get a big, say, cleaning company from, let's say, France to do the cleaning, every time your rates pay for that, essentially it's French shareholders that are collecting that money in the end. And what community wealth building looks at is we should preference local. And so what that means is, if you get 2 bids and one's from this French company and one's from a local company and they're about the same, you should give it to the local company. Because although on paper they're about the same amount of money, if you give the contract to this local company, what will happen is they employ local, they live local.
Yep.
So when you pay them, they'll go to local restaurants, they'll go to local shopping centres, they'll go to local cafes, and so that money stays locally in Liverpool and it builds the economy. And that flows through to local jobs for local people. So if you're investing local, you get local jobs for local people. And I think the biggest thing about that policy as well is the airport.
Yeah.
So Western Sydney Airport is in Liverpool. And I think they're building a city there called the Aerotropolis. I think it's vitally important that Liverpool and all of Western Sydney are the ones that benefit the most from that. I don't want to see a situation where organisations and corporations from around Australia and around the world move in and it becomes a little bubble within Western Sydney. I want that to be Western Sydney. I want people from Western Sydney to work there and benefit from it, and that's what local jobs for local people
That's
means.
great. That's really good. And obviously with your background too in IT, I'm sure you've seen over the years that a lot of these big projects for hospitals and infrastructure that involves a lot of like information technology is being sourced to the big companies that are overseas, where we have the talent here, we have the local IT companies that could deliver.
Yep. Well, you just look at companies like I think Canva's based in Adelaide. Atlassian is of course the perfect example. And I think we even seen it during COVID, not so much in IT, but in manufacturing and that kind of thing, where for 20, 30 years we thought that Australia, was inefficient or too expensive. But when we were called upon locally because supply chains broke down, we saw some amazing innovation locally, and I think that applies to IT as well.
For sure. No, it's good. And it's good to have you know about that area very well, so that's good. Talk to us about your council services.
Yeah, look, I think for a lot of people, their interaction with local government comes down to those sort of 3 classics, which is rates, roads, and rubbish. And as much as the airport and those big strategic things that are important, it's just as important to get the day-to-day stuff right. So we've got to make sure that the grass is cut, the lawns look good, the landscaping's done well, potholes are fixed, And you know, if you and your libraries are good, you know, they've got the books you want, they've got the services you want. And one of the ideas that I'd like to bring, should I become mayor, is to essentially bring council to the people. And what I mean by that is, currently if you want to pay your rates in person, or you want to put an application in person, you have to get in the car or get on the bus and travel into Liverpool. And Liverpool, the Liverpool council is quite big geographically.
Yeah.
So what I would bring to council is we'd actually have little, sort of like the Service New South Wales model. So at local libraries and other local council facilities, you'd be able to do some of those services. So you'd be able to go to, for instance, Carnes Hill Library and pay your rates there. You'd be able to go to the Casula Powerhouse and lodge an issue or a request. You don't necessarily have to, if you can't do it online and you can't go into Moore Street, we should have more options. And
Yeah, it's good. More efficient.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
That sounds great. Look, this is a pretty, I guess, very important topic. COVID, it hit Liverpool region very hard. And that was really the centre of the start, the flare that we had in Sydney not long ago. Talk to us how, you know, the experience and what you went through with that.
Yeah, it was tough. And, you know, sort of speaking with people from all walks of life, I think we've all been very heavily impacted by it. You know, some of the stories and some of the issues I've had to deal with will live with me for the rest of my life. You know, some of them are quite tragic. But I think what we saw as well was the strength and the resilience of, you know, the people of Liverpool and the people of Western Sydney. And for me, I think it was a true test of leadership. So if you want to be an MP or you want to be a mayor or a councillor, those functions and those dinners you get taken to and the beautiful dinners and the wine, that's all fabulous. But I think the true test of a leader is when times are tough and your community calls on you, where are you? And I was certainly there every day fighting for my community. You know, whether it was trying to get the construction industry back up, whether it was trying to get the curfew abolished. You know, every opportunity I had, whether it was in the newspapers or on TV or even through my Facebook videos, I was fighting for my community. And although it was a tragic time, we lost some friends and family, I think at the same time we saw the best of our community as well.
Yeah, it was an incredibly tough time to be a politician with you know, we haven't really been through this before, so it was all new, but also for all the emergency services, you know, the ambulance, the hospitals, the police, the fire, like they had to do their job in a very tough circumstance.
Yeah, and you know, I've spoken to some people in the medical, you know, the health services area, and you know, it's no exaggeration to say that, you know, they are superheroes. And I know they don't like to be called superheroes, but you know, we were locked up at home, and every time we'd go to the shops, we'd put our mask on and we'd sanitise, and we'd be frightened that we would catch COVID, and we'd do everything to stop that. They would get up every single day and walk right into the fire. You know, they'd go to hospitals where they had people infected with COVID. They would come into close contact. They would treat them, and they would do that day after day after day after day. And you can't thank them enough. And you know, they literally put their lives at risk for our lives, and you can't thank someone enough for that kind of sacrifice and commitment.
Yeah, it's so true, very true. One final message for the community.
Yeah, look, I guess it's important that we vote. Voting is compulsory, and if you don't vote, you'll get a fine. So even if you're watching this and you're not in Liverpool, if you are in New South Wales, please know that on December 4th there is council elections. If you are in Liverpool, I'd love for you to vote for me. You've just heard a little bit about my story and what I stand for. So please go to www.nathanhagarty.com.au, and you can find out a little bit more about me and how to support me and how to help me get there on December 4th. So thank you.
It's been a real pleasure, Nathan, to meet you and have this chat, and I really do wish you the very best in the upcoming elections.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. Cheers.
Thanks, mate. Cheers. Thank you.
Australia's first Indian magazine to have a national reach, Indus Age is the largest circulated South Asian magazine in Australia with 5 simultaneous editions, 55,000 copies printed monthly, 220,000 readers, largest network of clients, undisputed leader in community news. Indus Age is circulated in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane and Perth to over 525 outlets. Grab your copy now to get the latest on the community, news from India, Bollywood, music and much more. For more info, log on to www.indusage.com.au.